That was a complete bloodbath, an absolute disaster, and frankly, one of the ugliest games I have ever had to watch. We are breaking down the 41-6 catastrophe against Seattle, the offseason roadmap, and the major changes that need to happen immediately. We have 9 critical updates to get through today. Script, if you are hurting right now, believe me, you are not alone. That was brutal. That was gut-wrenching. That was a complete and total capitulation. Watching the San Francisco 49ers get dismantled in the divisional round of the playoffs by the Seattle Seahawks, losing 41-6, was like watching a nightmare unfold in slow motion. Seattle is moving on to the NFC Championship game. They get to host the winner of the Rams and Bears matchup, while the 49ers season is officially dead and buried. Before we start the therapy session, do me a massive favor. Hit that like button, share this with a fellow fan who needs to vent, and make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss a second of our off-season coverage. Look, if we take a step back and look at the big picture, for San Francisco to go 12-5 this season and actually win a playoff game with the absolute laundry list of injuries they sustained on both sides of the ball, you have to say the season was objectively a success. They were fighting with one hand tied behind their back all year. But does that make this loss any easier to swallow? Absolutely not. It doesn't take the sting out of this defeat. It doesn't wash away the salt in the wound. For this fan base, this is a sour, bitter way to end the 2025 campaign, putting the final nail in the coffin with a 35-point blowout. I truly believe the future of this organization is still bright, but we cannot sugarcoat this. This game was a disaster. It was an avalanche that started the moment the ball was kicked off, and that snowball just kept rolling, gaining size, speed, and violence until it buried the entire team. We are going to dissect every painful moment. We are going to look at the offseason, and we are going to ask the hard questions. Let's be real for a second. Was there ever a moment after the first 5 minutes where you actually felt confident? The context here matters. The Niners were working on a short week, a 5-day rest period after traveling across the country to fight Philadelphia in the wild card round. Meanwhile, Seattle? They had 2 full weeks of rest because they beat us in Week 18. They were fresh. They were recharged. And it showed. Seattle came into this game faster, more physical, better prepared, and significantly better coached. They were the deeper team. If San Francisco wanted to pull off this upset as touchdown underdogs, they needed to play a flawless game. They needed to play infinitely better than they did in the regular season finale, where they couldn't even crack 200 yards of offense. They needed to stop the run. They needed to protect Brock Purdy. They did none of those things. Instead, they took a Mike Tyson uppercut to the jaw in the first 10 seconds, and they never woke up. The game started with a special teams failure that set the tone for the entire night. Rashid Shaheed, a trade deadline acquisition for Seattle, a move that was brilliant at the time and looks even better now, took the opening kickoff 95 yards to the house. The stadium was literally shaking. Before fans could even settle into their seats, it was 7-0. Just like that. And despite how much better the special teams unit has been this year compared to last, in the biggest moment, on the biggest stage, they collapsed. But it wasn't just special teams. The offense had a chance to respond. They drove the ball. They got into Seattle territory. And then we saw a decision that will haunt us for a long time. On 3rd and 1, Christian McCaffrey gets stuffed. Okay, it happens. But on 4th and 1, from the right hash, Kyle Shanahan calls a play that was frankly unacceptable given the situation. He calls a run to the fullback with a pitch option to the short side of the field against a defense that is historically fast and athletic. It was a horizontal play against a sideline-to-sideline defense. It was a failure of strategy. You pick that up, you get points, the momentum shifts. Instead, you hand Seattle incredible field position. Then, on the very next drive, Brock Purdy finds Jake Tonjes on an in-breaking route. He picks up the first down and immediately fumbles the football. So, let's recap the opening sequence. A kickoff return touchdown allowed, a failed 4th down conversion, and a fumble. In the first quarter, it was already 17-0. By halftime, it was 24-6. And honestly, the game was over right there. I know some people will point to the comeback against Detroit in 2023, but this felt different. Any hope of a miracle was crushed on the first drive of the 3rd quarter when Purdy was sacked instantly. Now, I know the defense gave up 41 points. I know Kenneth Walker walked into the end zone multiple times without a finger being laid on him. The defense was not good. But we have to talk about complementary football. We have said for months that for this team to make a run, the offense needed to hit 30 points a game because the defense was patchwork. The offense did the defense zero favors tonight. Look at Seattle's scoring drives. They had a special teams touchdown. They had an 11-play drive after the fourth down stop. They had a 5-play drive after the fumble. In the second half, they had drives of 36 yards, 47 yards, and 37 yards. Seattle had short fields all night long. They only had one single drive of over 50 yards the entire game, yet they scored 41 points. That is an indictment on the 49ers' offense. You cannot ask a defense to hold up when their backs are against the wall inside their own territory over and over again. This brings me to the question of the day, and I want to see your thoughts in the comments section because this is going to be controversial. Given how thoroughly Mike Macdonald has dominated this matchup recently, is it time to admit that Kyle Shanahan has a schematic ceiling against elite, physical defenses, or is this purely a result of the roster injuries? I want to hear your honest take below. Because, let's be honest, Mike Macdonald hooped Kyle Shanahan in this game. In the last two matchups between these rivals, the Niners went 8 straight quarters without scoring a touchdown against this defense until late in this one. That is alarming. Shanahan gives you a chance to win every week, usually, but against this specific Seattle team, he looked lost. He got outcoached. And that Seattle team is not going away. They look like the team representing the NFC in the Super Bowl at Levi's Stadium. That is the competition now. So, where do we go from here? We have to look at the offseason because there are massive holes on this roster that need to be addressed if this team wants to be a serious contender next year. First, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the strength and conditioning staff. I am taking the glass-half-full approach and saying this team will be a top contender next year, but only if they stay healthy. This has been a decade-long problem. The organization needs to completely audit their weight training, their recovery protocols, and their practice regimens. If Jed York needs to move the practice field, do it. If they need to fire the entire medical staff, do it. It is not sustainable to try and win a Super Bowl when you are down to your 5th and 6th string linebackers every January. It is negligence at this point. If the Niners were healthier, they win the Super Bowl this year. The NFC was wide open. The AFC number 1 seed lost their quarterback, Bo Nix, to a broken ankle. The path was there, but the bodies weren't. Secondly, the offensive line. I have zero confidence the front office will fix this because Kyle Shanahan recently called Jake Brindle one of the best centers in the NFL. That statement alone is terrifying. Brindle might be smart, he might be great at calling protections, but physically, he is not a starting caliber center for a Super Bowl team. This offensive line has been exposed in big games since 2021. They were humiliated by Seattle 3 times this year. You cannot contend for a championship with a bottom-tier offensive line. It is not serious football. Third, the wide receiver room needs a complete rebuild. Ricky Pearsall is a talented player, but his health is a question mark. Beyond him, who scares a defense? Nobody. The wide receivers tonight combined for 3 catches for 24 yards on 10 targets. That is pathetic. Seattle didn't fear them at all. Jawan Jennings is a free agent. Kendrick Bourne is a free agent. You have guys like Demarcus Robinson and Jacob Cowing, but you need a vertical threat. You need speed. There is talk about maybe making a run at a guy like Kyle Pitts from Atlanta. I know he's a tight end, but he's basically a massive receiver. Since we don't know when George Kittle is fully back to his old self, maybe that's the move. It would probably mean letting Jawan Jennings walk, but Pitts gives you an athletic mismatch that this offense desperately lacks. I would love to see what Purdy could do with a weapon like that. Speaking of Brock Purdy, I don't have questions about him. He made some incredible throws tonight under duress. It is not fair to evaluate a quarterback when his offensive line is a turnstile and he has no running game. He was fighting for his life. The running back situation is trickier. What does Christian McCaffrey look like next year? Father Time is undefeated. Did we waste his prime years by not going all in at the trade deadline? Jordan James was one of the only bright spots in this game, and it took 19 games for the coaching staff to finally give him the rock. That is poor personnel management. On defense, the coaching carousel is spinning. If Robert Saleh leaves, who steps in? Gus Bradley is the internal name, but I would look at Raheem Morris or Jim Schwartz. We need aggressive play calling. Getting Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and Mike Williams back will instantly fix a lot of problems. I liked what I saw from the rookies like Alfred Collins and Upton Stout. Bryce Huff is a solid number 2 pass rusher, but he is a Robin, not a Batman. We need a Batman. The secondary is a mess. The safety play all season was atrocious. Malik Mustafa will hit you, so he has a future, but the rest? Jason Pinnock has been on 3 teams for a reason. We need a veteran safety who can actually cover ground. When you look at the totality of this game, Seattle just kicked the door down and took what they wanted. San Francisco needed to be perfect, and instead, they were messy, sloppy, and chaotic. 41-6 is a bad way to go out. It's embarrassing. But, and I want to end on this, don't let the recency bias erase what was a fun season. Winning 12 games and a playoff match with a roster held together by duct tape is an achievement. Going into next year, with a third-place schedule, the road will be easier. The talent is there. The quarterback is there. The biggest need this offseason isn't a player, it's health. The front office has to spend the money, make the staff changes, and solve the injury riddle. If they do that, we are right back in the mix. If they don't, we are going to be having this same conversation next January. I want to hear from you. Sound off below on who needs to go and who needs to stay. We appreciate your support for another incredible season of coverage. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will catch you in the next one.